Hello, this is an overview for Economics 8.2 on partnerships, types of businesses. And again, I'll just review here the general advantages and disadvantages of partnerships, the types of partnerships, and then I think most importantly that you may not be able to pull as easily from the text what I think are kind of the big ideas, the so whats. Why should we care about this type of business structure versus another? Um, and so, as you can see, partnerships, the difference between them and sole proprietorships is you either have two or more owners. So it can be more than just two, kind of an unlimited amount, but two or more owners considered a partnership. This is only 70% of U.S. businesses and 5% of U.S. sales. We'll get to what makes up the most of that in a second when we talk about 8.3 in corporations. So these are businesses that you start up with a buddy, something where we hear like the famous stories of the beginnings of Apple or IBM, where two guys in a garage and they decide to start that business in tandem. Or you read the article in our book about Jerry Yang and the starting of Yahoo and how he had a partner who helped him start that initially. Later, they would incorporate it; it would become a corporation, but it started as a partnership. The advantages of this is like sole proprietorships. You have an ease of startup, very few regulations. For this type of business, the book says you just need an articles of partnership, or you don't even have to have a legal contract to start a partnership, though that could end up messy if you don't write that down and get outline the rules ahead of time, because we all know group projects are difficult. Now imagine making a expensive business a group project. And apparently there's a Uniform Partnership Act that states provide that covers partnerships, even if you don't have your own personal legal outline of how your partnership's going to work. Other advantages here is where it comes from the disadvantages of sole proprietorships is now you have somebody to share decisions making with. Again, one or maybe more people. You have counsel, as the Bible says. You have a plethora of counselors so that you can make good decisions. And you also have then specialization, where while one person has to do everything in a sole proprietorship and you might not be good at everything, in a partnership you can say, hey, you handle this aspect of the business, I'll handle this aspect of the business. We can ignore the parts we're not good at, and so that by its nature increases the efficiency of your business, where you have everybody tailoring to their skills. And you're going to see as we talk about corporations and multinational corporations, that is a key trend in businesses. If we specialize our labor, then we become more efficient because we're doing the things we are motivated most to do, which is probably the biggest thing, and the things we're most skilled at doing. And so we're not wasting our time doing things that someone else could be doing better. And partnerships are at the beginning of allowing that to happen. Also, partnership gives you more capital. It's not just your own personal savings; it's now the savings of all your different partners coming together and pooling those resources. So that means your business can grow, your business can develop more. It gets easier to get started off the ground because you have more money and more resources to draw from initially and ongoing when it's time for your business to grow or change. And the taxes are considered an advantage because you're still only taxed individually. So you're just paying whatever income you make from your partnership. You pay your personal income tax on it. There is no other business tax that the business incurs or the firm takes on. So you're still only paying taxes once, and for whatever you happen to make. If you make less than your partner, you're taxed at different levels. So it's equitable to each partner depending on what they're making. Disadvantages is you'll see, we'll look at types in a second, but there's still the threat of unlimited liability. At least one person within this partnership, or maybe all, have liability. So that, again, if there's debts that are incurred or lawsuits or anything that come against overdue taxes, even that come against the business, then you're all unlimited liable. And so your personal finances could be at risk depending on how the business goes. And also, as I already mentioned, with the idea of group projects, is you have the issue of personal conflict. That when you get into a business partnership with somebody, a lot of times it can be a very difficult thing depending on how well you get along and you're able to resolve conflicts working with somebody with a different personality. Once money gets involved in relationships, things can go bad very, very quickly. And that's why a lot of people are very hesitant to mix business with personal relationships, because they know that's going to be a tricky dynamic to manage. And so personal conflict is a potential disadvantage to partnerships. The three types the book goes over are general, limited, and limited liability partnerships. The general just means we're all equal. We're equally in charge. We're equally invested, and we're equally liable So we all have an equal say. We all have an equal. Doesn't mean we necessarily do all the same things, but we're equal partners in this. And also, when things go good and when things go bad, we're generally equal. Limited means that there's at least one general partner, and that person has kind of the task of running and also the authority of running the business. Means they also have the liability. They have the unlimited liability, so they're the ones who's going to get hit with the debts. Whereas their other partners in limited partnership, they're just the givers of capital. So they've invested a certain amount of money into your business. They've provided certain resources for you to go out and run with your idea. You've made them partners. They're going to share in the profit. They're like investors in your business. But if things go bad, they only have limited liability. They can only lose the money they put into the company. If that debt were to grow bigger than what they've put in, whoever they owe the money to cannot come after their personal finances. So the limited partners are providing the money, and they have limited liability, whereas the general partner, they are running the business and they carry the unlimited risk of how that business does. And then it gives this third type, which is kind of a new and more rare type, which is the limited liability partners, or an LLP. And that is a unique association where everyone is able to have just that limited liability. And the book says this is a newer type for when this book was published in the 90s, and that this type is regulated by states, and that they only allow certain professional groups to act in this way in order to limit their liability. And you can't just have a general business and say, "Oh, we're all going to have limited liability." That's not allowed in most states. I looked at California. I think it was accountants, and actually, let me look for it real quick. In California, only lawyers and accountants have the right to form an LLP, so that nobody in that group it carries on a burden of debt beyond what they've personally invested in the company. So there is no general partner in an LLP, but again, those are more rare and only allowed to be formed in certain professions as determined by certain state laws. So the previous two, general and limited, are more common. The big ideas for partnerships, I've kind of hit upon it, but one, just the importance of specialization. That again, in just general economic principles, you want to be more efficient, you want to get more done, which again brings down prices, which increases profit, all these sorts of things. You want to specialize, you want to divide up the labor. One of the great revelations of in The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith was that he talks about this thing called the pin factory, where he would talk about how many pins a single worker could make just, as a craftsman, forming the pin and doing all the stages of his pin forming. And then he said, if you were to take the making of a metal pin and separate it into 6 or 7 different tasks, and each person only performs that one repetitive task, he remarks on just the exponential growth of productivity that is achieved when individual people have one job to focus on, and they can do that one job really well and fast and efficiently. And that was one of the chief pieces of the Industrial Revolution and the abundance that we enjoy under free markets, is its recognition that, we want to divide the labor. We want to let each person do what they're skilled to do, or what they're able to focus on to do, or what they're motivated to do, because that makes things more efficient. And that gets everybody more access to scarce resources with alternative uses. So partnerships are a beginning example of how we can specialize and divide up the labor. Again, think about the limited partnership. One person has the money, they don't have the idea, or they don't have the desire to even run the business, but they're willing to say, "Hey, I'll give you, $10,000, $50,000, whatever, $2,000 to start your business. Just make me a partner." That's a specialization. They have the money. You don't. You have the idea. And when you combine the different skills and gifts, like the different parts of a body, you're going to get a greater whole. The two other ideas as we go from partnership to corporation, starting from sole proprietorship, is this idea: the two things that partnership begins to do, and we're going to see this expand under corporations, is that they give you greater access to capital, so you have more resources to do more with, and they limit your liability. It spreads the risk. Starting a business is extremely risky. one thing I'd love for you to get from this class is that, we picture business as just a bunch of greedy people trying to make a profit and at the expense of everybody else. And they're, that somehow their self-interest is this overriding evil. No, they're actually taking a huge risk. Most of us rather just sit on the couch and be served and have somebody do the things for us. But they're willing to go out and take the extra step, take the initiative, take the responsibility, and take the risk. And one of the things that's allowed our businesses to grow, because it is such a risky business, a vast majority of businesses fail in their first years of starting up, is the fact that partnerships, again, give you more resources to try to make that startup successful and to maintain it and help grow it. And it spreads out the risk. So not everybody, again, you're going to get more people investing in your business if they say, oh, I can give you money or I can become part of this business, but I am now not carrying the full burden of that business. You're going to get more people seeking that as an opportunity. So just like maybe for your history night, you wouldn't want to get up and give your speech all by yourself, but with a partner, then all of a sudden you've spread out that risk, you've spread out the attention, and you're like, okay, I can manage that. You're going to get more businesses started when you have those two opportunities: more resources, more capital, and less risk to any one person. So that's, again, two essential tenet to, I think, successful business structures. All right, look out for the next one on 8.3 corporations.